So first of all, I will talk about the pericardiocosternal ligaments. So as this is your sternum, if this is your sternum, so the heart is placed like this. So the pericardiocosternal ligament will help in the attachment of the heart with the dorsal surface of the sternum. So this was about the pericardiocosternal ligament, and we all know that endocardium, myocardium, and the pericardium, these are layers of the heart. I'm not discussing about this over here. So heart, it is an hollow muscular organ present in the middle mediastinum. We all know there are three mediastinum. The mediastinum divided into the three regions: the anterior, the middle, and the posterior mediastinum. Okay, so the heart is enclosed by the pericardium, obviously. It is a cone-shaped organ. It has a base, apex, two surfaces, and two borders. So the base is directed upward, attached to the blood vessels, and extends from third to the sixth rib. Let me discuss about this part. You can clearly see this area is the base. It is directed upward, and the level is third to the sixth rib. Okay, it is attached to the third and the sixth rib. Okay, now the apex is directed downward, backward, and to the left, present from sixth to chondrosternal articulation. So if we talk about the apex, it is directed backwards and downwards, and it will extend till the chondrosternal ligament and from the sixth rib. Okay, so that's the position of the apex of the heart. So coming on to the anterior border, it is strongly convex, directed downward, backward, and this forms by the right ventricle. So this is the anterior border, which is formed by the right ventricle. It is directed downwards. Okay, so this was all about the anterior border. Coming on to the about the posterior border, it is slightly concave, thick, short. Obviously, it is short and formed by the left ventricle. So clearly, you can see this is the posterior border. It is short and formed by the left ventricle. So this was all about the the borders, okay, the apex and the base. So this was all about the borders, apex and the base. Now coming on to the part where we are going to study about the grooves that are present in the heart. Okay, so there are three grooves that we have to discuss: the coronary, the longitudinal, and the intermediate. So there are three grooves that we have to discuss over here. Okay, now coming on to the part that right and left surfaces of the heart are convex. Okay, both are convex. They are marked by the presence of grooves that marks the division of atria in the ventricle. So what these grooves help in that they will demarcate that above this is atria and below this is ventricle. Now coming first to discuss, we are about to discuss that the coronary groove. So the coronary groove, it is a transverse groove that indicates the division between the atria and the ventricle. It encircles the whole heart except at the origin of the pulmonary artery. So if this is the heart, this is the ventricle and the head. So if this is the atria, this is the ventricle. Okay. So here, this is the coronary groove which demarcates that the above the coronary groove is atria and below which is ventricle. Now, what we have to observe that at the origin of the pulmonary artery, this coronary groove is not present. As if there is coronary pulmonary artery over here, this groove is absent over here. Okay, that we have to discuss. That we have to remember actually. Now coming on to the yes, one important point over here that the coronary arteries that are embedded in the coronary groove. So after the origin of the aorta gives supplies to the heart, which are coronary arteries. So those coronary arteries are going to be traveled in these coronary grooves. Okay. So all the arteries that originate from the aorta are going to be traveling in these all grooves that we are studying here. Okay. Now coming on to the longitudinal groove. So the left longitudinal groove is present behind the pulmonary artery. Okay. It is anterior in position. It extends from the coronary groove and moves downward and parallel to the posterior border of the heart. Okay, it will move downward parallel to the posterior border of the heart. Coming on to the right longitudinal, it is posterior in position, extends from the coronary groove below the termination of the posterior vena cava and passes downward towards the apex, but not reach the apex. So what we have to see that the right longitudinal groove, it will extend it will extend below the vena cava, the posterior vena cava. extend from the posterior vena cava towards the apex. If this is the apex, then it will run towards the apex, but do not reach the apex. So that's what the point that we have to remember. So let me show you in the diagram that how it looks like. So this, wait a second. So this is the coronary groove. These are the longitudinal grooves. Okay. So these coronary groove accommodates the coronary arteries that originate from the aorta. Okay. So these are the your coronary arteries that are traveling in the coronary grooves. So that was the part I have to discuss. Now coming on to the next point about the intermediate groove. So the intermediate groove, what's the specific about the intermediate groove is it is only present in the left ventricle. Okay, so that's the peculiarity of the intermediate groove, that it is only present in the left ventricle and it is shallow. Okay, so all the groove accommodates blood vessel that I have previously mentioned and fat. So there is also an accommodation of fat in all these grooves that we had discussed earlier. So now coming on to the weight of the heart. Okay, so what we had to focus on that it is only the 0.4% of the body weight. If the animal is of 300 kg, then take about the 0.4% of that particular body weight, and that would be the weight of the okay weight of the heart. Okay, so take 0.4% of the 300 kgs of the animal, then you will get the weight of the heart. So that was the formula that we can apply to estimate what's the weight of the heart. Now coming on to the right atrium. So first of all, we are going to discuss compartment by compartment. So first of all, we are going to discuss about the right atria. So it is obviously smaller than the left atria. It forms the right anterior part of the base of the heart. Now, let's see. So you can see this is the right atrium, position of the right atrium. It forms the anterior part of the base. Okay, it forms the anterior part of the base. Okay. Now, the main cavity of the atrias are sinus venous and the diverticulum, which is known as auricular appendix. It is a diverticulum, which is a conical pouch-like structure that covers the anterior border or anterior part of the aorta. So, this auricular appendix, what's the function of this auricular appendix is that it covers the anterior part of the aorta. Okay, now the blind end of that auricular appendix, blind end of this auricular appendix that we are discussing is present in front of the pulmonary arch. Okay, so the blind end of this auricular appendix is in front of the pulmonary arch. Now, we are going to discuss that interiorly how the atria is. So it is smooth gelatinizing. Okay, gelatinized means it is a gel-like membrane which is formed by the endocard. So that was all about the atria that you have to focus on, that how the inner surface of the atria is. Now coming on to the opex, that how many openings are there in the right atria. Okay, so the very first opening is of the anterior vena cava. Okay, so the vena cava that is coming from the anterior part of the body that open in the dorso-anterior part of the sinus venous. Sinus venous, which was the cavity of the right atrium, sinus venous, into that cavity at the dorso-anterior part. This anterior vena cava will open in the right atrium. Now, the opening of the posterior vena cava is present on the dorso-posterior part of the sinus venous. Now, the opening of the vena hemiazygos, which is a single vein, present just below the opening of the posterior vena cava. So, if this is the atria, and here's the opening of the posterior vena cava, so just below the posterior vena cava, the vena hemiazygos opens into the sinus venosus of the right atria. Now, the coronary sinus, sometimes. So, the coronary sinus is a sinus where all the veins of the heart that are supplying to the heart, the veins that arteries those are supplying the heart, they will obviously going to get some deoxygenated material. That deoxygenated material will be carried into the heart at the site of coronary sinus. Means all the blood that has been deoxygenated by the muscles of the heart during the respiration process. Okay, so that deoxygenated blood will going to be drained out into the right atria at the site which is known as the coronary sinus. Now sometimes the vena hemiazygos joins the great cardiac vein and open together at the coronary sinus. Now the coronary valves, we are going to discuss about the valves also. So first of all, let me tell that the valve of the inferior vena cava is Eustachian valve, while the valve of the coronary sinus is Thebetius valve. The valves, these comes in the question. So please remember that the Eustachian valve is the valve of the inferior vena cava, while the Thebetius valve is the valve of the coronary sinus. Now coming on to the orifice, the right atrial orifice, it is on the floor of the venous sinus, the right and the left ventricle. And so this part is the raw that these are not the left ventricle. It is the right ventricle and right atria. Okay, so the right atria and right ventricles, these the opening between them is guarded by the tricuspid valve, which have three cusps. Okay, so these three cusps will guard the opening. Okay, it will guard the opening of the between the right atria and the right ventricle. Now about the foramen ovale, we all know from the beginning that the atrial septum, in the early embryonic, in the early fetal stage, there is a presence of a foramen which is known as the foramen ovale. It is in the fetal life of an adult, not in the adult, in an animal. Sorry, in an animal. Okay, and it forms the fossa ovalis in the case of the adult. In adult, it forms the fossa ovalis. It is present in the interauricular or atrial septum. Now, if in the right atrium, there are muscular ridges formed by the musculi pectina and get terminated at the crista terminalis. So there are some ridges that are present. This is the wait. This is the surface of the atria. Then there are some presence of the ridges there in the atria which end at a crista terminalis, which is a slight depression or a ridge-like structure which is present in the atria. So at the crista terminalis, all the musculi pectini will going to be end. Okay. Now the intravenous crust. It is a crust when blood comes from the tuberculum lori. Okay, then the blood comes in the tubercular lori of anterior vena cava. It is directed towards the right AV orifice. So it means it is a crust which will direct the blood into the right AV orifice. Now about the right ventricle, we are going to discuss about the right ventricle. Okay, so about the right ventricle. So it will form the anterior part of the ventricular mass. The right ventricle do not reach the apex. That's the peculiarity of the right ventricle. It won't be. It does not form the apex. So from the anterior border of the heart, obviously it is conical in outline, concentric shape. When it will convex, means when we do the convection cross section of this right ventricle, we will find that the opening or the cavity we are going to see, we will observe that it is in crescent shaped. Okay, so the right ventricle communicate with the right atria, obviously by the AV orifice, we all know, interventricular orifice. So now coming on to the muscle part of the or the inner surface of the right ventricle consists of some muscular thing. Okay, so there are some muscles in the right ventricles, both the ventricles actually. So the basic is that in both the ventricles there are presence of some muscles, and those muscles are togetherly called as columnae carne. So the very first muscles of the columnae carne is your this is the musculi papillaris. Okay, so this is the very first muscle of the columnar carni that we have to discuss. It is also known as the pillar of the heart. It is cone-shaped eminence, okay, present on the wall of the heart. Okay. Now there are four in number, okay, out of which the one is present in the wall of the ventricle, while 3 is on the interventricular septa. Okay, 3 are present on the septa. Here 3 on the septa and 1 on the wall of the ventricle. Okay, now this, the apex of the musculi papillaris, sorry, there are chordae tendineae. Okay, so at the apex of this musculi papillaris, there is chordae tendineae, and which are attached to the cusp of the wall. Means if considerably we consider this is the wall, these are the cusps. Okay, so these are the pillars. So the apex of these are going to be attached with the your tricus walls or the bicus walls. The apex will connect the bicus with the help of the chordae tendineae, and the one end of the chordae tendineae will attach at the apex of the musculi papillaris. Okay. Now coming on to the moderator band, it is a band that extends from the interventricular septa to the wall of the ventricle, and it will prevent the over distension of the ventricle during the pumping of the blood. Tubercular carni, these are present on the rest of the ventricle. These are the muscular beams. Okay, there is nothing to discuss about the tubercular carni. These are just the muscular beams that are present. Okay, now discussing about the tricuspid, it is the extension of the endocardium, obviously. Endocardium, the extension, it is strengthened by the fibrous and the muscular tissue. So the fibrous is free while the muscular tissue is attached. So on the free border of the cusp, there is present of a fibrocartilage stiffening. There is a stiffening of a fibrocartilage known as corpus orienti. Okay, so that corpus orienti, it is a fibrocartilage stiffening at the free border of the cusp. Okay, now the crista supraventriculis is a crest that will separate the conus arteriosus and the right AV orifice. So this is the crest that will separate the conus arteriosus and the orifice. This is the orifice, and this is the your conus arteriosus. Okay, so this crest will separate between them. So it is just a supraventricular crest that is present, which will separate the conus arteriosus and the right AV orifice. Now coming on to the left auricle, obviously larger than the right atria, present at the posterior part of the base of the heart. It lies behind the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Same concept of the appendix and the sinus venous. On the roof there are four openings of the pulmonary veins. So if this is the base or base of the left atria auricle, okay, so there will be four openings for the pulmonary artery. Okay, now the musculi pectini is less in number but larger in the size. The left atria communicates with the left ventricle through the left atrioventricular wall and guarded by the obviously the bicus of the mitral wall. So the interior is a smooth, obviously, or gelatinous, which is formed by the endocardium. So coming onto the left ventricle, it is formed by the it forms the left posterior part of the ventricular mass. It is conical in shape. Wall is three times thicker than the right ventricle. It forms the posterior border and the apex. So the posterior border and the apex of the heart is formed. The apex is formed by the right ventricle. Oh, left ventricle. Sorry, my bad. So the left ventricle will form the apex, while the right ventricle that we had previously discussed will not reach the apex or will not form the apex. It is circular in cross section. Okay, the papillary muscles are two in number, and the moderator band are also two in number. So there are two cusps, one the anterior and one posterior. Okay, and the left AV orifice. The opening of the aorta is on the dorso-anterior aspect of the base of the heart. So if this is the base of the heart, so on the dorso-anterior part, if this is the heart, This is the shape of the heart. Then the dorsal anterior aspect of the heart, there is will be opening of the aorta. So there are three aortic valves that are present at the junction between the opening of the ventricle and the aorta. There are thick three aortic valves. There are three aortic valves that are present at the junction between the ventricle and the aorta. So there are presence of four fibrous rings. Okay, so if there are four fibrous rings, so we can see that they are presence of two atrioventricular rings. Okay, and each ring, there are two in number, so one ring is present at the junction between the atria and the ventricle of both the sides. Similarly, the concept goes with the your pulmonary artery and the aorta. Coming on to os cordis, which is a visceral bone present only at the base of the aortic ring. Okay, so they are two in number, the right and the left. The right is larger in size, triangular. The os cordis is present only the older animals. So in the older animals, there is only the presence of the os cordis. Horse. So now we are coming on to the species difference. Okay, now we are going to discuss about the species difference. So the broader base, intermediate, and the os cordis is absent in the case of the horse. Okay, so coming on to the dog is the heart of the dog is oval in shape. The apex is blunt and rounded. The right and the left longitudinal groove meet each other at the right side of the apex. So the longitudinal groove will meet each other at the right side of the apex. Okay, so in the case of the pig, the apex is blunt. Okay, apex blunt होता है उसमें. Intermediate grooves are small or absent. So there may be the intermediate groove or may not be. Means it could be absent, or there should be a presence, or there can be a presence of the intermediate groove in the case of the pig, but it is generally not seen. So aortic arch is strongly convex. Okay. In the case of the fowl, okay, so the heart is present between the two lobes of the liver. Okay. So pericardium is thin, membranous, and attached with the falciform ligament of the liver. So you can see that how the liver and the heart are correlated or closely associated. Why? Because there is an absence of diaphragm in the case of your fowl. Okay, so the pericardium is thin and membranous and attached with the calciform ligament of the liver. The right atrium is larger. Oh, so here's the difference that the left is generally larger, but here in the case of the fowl, the right atrium is larger. Now the anterior vena cava are two in numbers. So generally there is only a single anterior vena cava which opens into the right atrium, while in the case of fowl, there are presence of the two anterior vena cava. So the tricuspid valve and the cardiac tendon are absent. So the tricuspid valve is itself absent. This was all about the heart that we have to see. So here in the figure, you can see that the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. So the coronary artery were the artery that originate just after the origination of the aorta. So you can clearly see the brachiocephalic trunk, the cranial vena cava, the right atrium, the right coronary artery, the right ventricle, left ventricle, intravenous tubercle. This tubercle that is present over here is the intravenous tubercle, the caudal vena cava, the pulmonary veins. These four that I had told you that at the left ventricle, base of the left ventricle, there are four openings for the pulmonary veins. Okay, that was good. So there is pulmonary arteries, the descending aorta. So this was all about the heart. Thank you, everyone.